What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. As you can see, we are joined by Carter again today. You may recognize him from the last video we did where we talked about the psychology of the midwit and a lot more. The feedback we got from that video was incredible, so we thought, why not do another one and get into a little bit more about our ideology and kind of how we got to where we're at. And then also kind of the impact that the America First movement, paleoconservatism, and kind of this refound nationalism kind of has had an impact on the political scene today. But yeah, we'll get into a lot of different things today. But how are you doing, Carter?
I'm good, man. You know, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me back on. It's always a good time when we get to chat. You know, we talk a decent bit privately and enjoyed the video that we did last week. And so I'm glad we kind of get on here and flesh out our beliefs a little bit more and, looking forward to it.
Hell yeah, exactly. If at any point my connection gets shoddy or whatever, just tell me and we can always splice something together later or something if we need to, but just let me know. But yeah, man. So what we were talking about before is that a lot of the people in our circles kind of came to these beliefs from kind of like a normie con mindset of like the Charlie Kirk talking points, the Ben Shapiro talking points, just Republican Inc. and slowly evolved through what we talked about. It was really the internet that got us into a lot of the ideas that we have, and non-traditional thinkers, non-establishment funded figures, like Nick Fuentes, Patrick Casey, a lot of the people that that we respect in the movement. But I wanted to know like kind of how you got to where you're at as far as your ideology goes. Where did you start? Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So, I was raised in a Christian household that voted Republican. I even hesitate to say it's conservative because, of course, we associate conservatism with voting Republican. But I think it was that there weren't a lot of explicitly conservative beliefs instilled in me. It was more so Democrats were bad, and so we vote Republican. And so, the 2016 election, of course, served as a catalyst for becoming more politically involved. Sorry about
that.
Good.
I thought it was me.
Yeah, no, sorry. The 2016 election served as a catalyst for becoming more politically involved and engaged. But for me, when I got to college, that was another thing where it was like, I know I don't agree with a lot of this left-wing stuff that's being pushed and such with such vehemence and such extremity. But frankly, it was about, I would say, summer of 2019 when I started to really question things that were going on. When I would look at I would keep up with the news and I would see what Trump was doing, and I'd read articles from media sources, and I just found myself wanting a little bit more and feeling like, this can't be quite it. And I felt like conservatism lacked just sort of that explicit set of foundational premises from which all of our other convictions are derived.
And I didn't know, and not to cut you off, I didn't know that 2019 was when that happened for you, because when I think about it, we started talking like early 2020, and that's when I found your Twitter account, and it was very like paleoconservative, and it was trending towards America First. So I think that's interesting that within a few months of you kind of having that red pill kind of, next thing you know, you're on this side of Twitter, and it's interesting how that happens.
Well, it was the Groyper Wars, to be honest, that's what exposed me to Nick Fuentes. And that was what I came across Nick Fuentes. And it's interesting because you would see it on Twitter from mainstream sources like, alt-right trolls harass Charlie Kirk. And I was never a big Charlie Kirk guy. I was like, all right, he's probably a net positive, whatever. Like, at least he's like making some kind of effort to put out, Republican or conservative, whatever you want to call it, put out those sorts of ideals on college campuses, et cetera. And then when I saw the Groyper Wars and I saw the clips and I watched Nick's streams of them and the way he talked about them, I was like, man, this guy is making arguments that I've never heard before. I may have
Exactly.
thought these things subconsciously, but I wasn't really articulating these to myself. I wasn't really having these sorts of discussions with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so from then on, it was about fall. It was maybe October or November of 2019 when I became more exposed to the America First movement, America First Twitter. And that's what really pushed me from a loose conservative, I wouldn't quite say classical liberal, because I always had reservations about excessive free speech.
Yeah.
I've always been critical. Frankly, I think a big thing that shifted me from conservative Republican to America First nationalist was my criticism of free markets. And that's always been something I've never struggled to criticize, is this free market fundamentalist in the Ben Shapiro and the neocon mold, where we're just sort of supposed to uncritically worship capitalism.
Yes.
And I said to myself, hey, there are a lot of problems with this radical free market corporate oligarchy capitalism. And so that was another thing that really drove me there. So that's a very, very quick summary of the progression of my political, social, and cultural beliefs.
Yeah, I would say something similar. I would say that same with me. That was one of the first issues that really kind of brought it home for me, as far as paleoconservatism and America First goes, was free market is not the answer to these issues. Like, you're not going to fight degeneracy by allowing corporations carte blanche to sexualize your kids or to, promote degeneracy on Nickelodeon. It's not, that's not fighting the battle. And that's so disingenuous when people like Charlie Kirk are saying things like, we're fighting the culture war. No, you're not. You're not fighting a culture war. You're giving them carte blanche to do whatever they want under the guise of, well, if it's not hurting me, then keep going for it. But it is hurting you at a deep level. And I think that,
and it's hurting your culture and the social fabric of your country.
Exactly.
That counts for something. That counts for something.
Right. The social fabric is it's priceless. It's intangible. You can't put a price on that. And then, if their whole metric is based on what's good for the GDP, sure, then it's a good thing if these corporations rise with the stock market. I mean, why not? But paleoconservatism and America First, I think, gives a good answer to that, in that what matters is the social fabric and the cohesion of the country,
right?
Not GDP, not numbers on a graph. And I know that's a meme, big line go up, but it's true though. Seeing numbers on a graph isn't going to stop my kids from being degenerates, or my cousins from being degenerates. And I think for me, so I kind of had two moments. There was, up until summer of 2016, before the election, I was just your normal, pardon my language, basic bitch Republican. I was just like, yeah, low taxes, blah, blah, blah. I didn't think Trump could win. I thought he was a meme. I was like, it's going to be Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton, and it's just going to be one of those elections. And then something happened, and it was the WikiLeaks. And that was the first thing in 2016 that woke me up to the power structures. I don't even know if you can say the P-gate word, Pizzagate, on YouTube without getting banned, but it was seeing how these power structures actually work and realizing that people weren't on Trump's side. Basic Republicans were not on his side. They were fighting against nationalism. And then I looked more into what nationalism was. And then around 2016 in the election, I started listening to a little bit of Alex Jones, a little bit of Joe Rogan. And that's kind of where the pipeline, I hate to even call it that because it's kind of like leftist terminology, like the pipeline, but
pipeline.
There's a little bit of truth to it, but it's true insofar as you're recognizing the truth as it's presented to you.
Yes.
And that's literally what happened to me.
I have to close my shade really quickly, but
continue. Oh yeah, we're good.
Continue.
You can still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that's what happened to me, was that around that time, I kind of got off of the Fox News train and got a little bit more into alternative media. And I think that's what we'll get more into as this talk progresses, is alternative media and its impact on the Republican movement and the conservative movement as a whole. But yeah, I started listening to Alex Jones a little bit. I got into a little bit of libertarian thought. We all had that Milo Yiannopoulos, Dave Rubin phase when he would actually have interesting people on, the Stefan Molyneux phase. So I think a lot of that and it brought a lot of people over here who otherwise would still be listening to Sean Hannity rooting for wars with Iran in order to protect Israel's border. You know what I mean? So I don't know if you can relate to that little pipeline at all, but.
No, I mean, I definitely can. One thing I sort of thought about as you were talking is, so we say, oh, it's going to be a Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush election. We just have supposed to say, well, we don't like Hillary Clinton, she's evil, like whatever, which is true. But
which is true, right?
Which is true, but it's like, all right, so we're going to go vote for Jeb Bush. And what are we supposed to do? Like encourage others to support Jeb Bush or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's hard to make an argument. One thing I think is so interesting is, why is it that those are the confines in which our conservative convictions are supposed to exist under? So, and of course, Nick talks about this, but we'll flesh it out a little bit more. As a conservative, we're supposed to believe in low taxes, anti-socialized markets, letting the free markets make determinations, so obviously support for Israel.
And basically social libertarianism.
Right. And just, the free market will act as the ultimate decider. It should act as the ultimate decider in virtually any situation. If it's not harming you as from a point of principle are supposed to be indifferent towards it, even if you disagree with it personally, same with free speech, these sorts of things. And so I think a question for me was, as I started listening to more Alex Jones and the WikiLeaks as well, was something that really, and I didn't really go into what the WikiLeaks were until summer of 2019. And when I started picking up on, the content of those kind of things and recognizing those forces in the, in the world.
Yeah.
It's for me where I was like, well, why is it that I started questioning to myself? I said, why is it that this is what I'm supposed to believe as a conservative? Why is it that nationalism we're supposed to be disabused of these nationalist principles and notions? What is the problem with it? Oh, because of Hitler, whatever. Like,
exactly.
It all goes back to Hitler.
Well, it's like when I quote tweeted Sebastian Gorka on today. It's like,
right.
It's like, what are you even talking about? Twitter are the real Nazis? Like, what? Yeah. That's what happens when your entire worldview, and mainstream Republicans and conservatives are just as guilty of this as the left is. Their entire worldview is centered around not being Hitler, not being a Nazi. Racist is the worst thing you could ever be called in your life. And it's like, you end up just playing the left's game and buying into their framing. Like,
it's one term I started writing, that I started using when I wrote essays in school, was the artificial parameters of discourse. And so when we talk about the framing that the left is able to impose with the linguistics, they set the conditions for what the discourse can be, what words we use. And so what it relates to is Nazis is just a synonymous, term of substitution for the worst type of person you can be. Yes. So Sebastian Gorka, when he's talking about Twitter are the real Nazis, he's not saying Twitter wants to exterminate Jews and, create a national socialist country of Aryan white people.
And of course they don't. Like, look at what they stand for.
Right, exactly. And what he's saying is Twitter are the worst, the Twitter employees and Twitter as a corporation, they're the worst people in the country. They're the worst people in the world, because Nazis, what Nazi means is the preeminent embodiment of evil that an individual or a political body or a corporation can possibly be. If bad exists on a scale of 1 to 10, Nazis are an 11, Nazis are an 11, and the second worst is like a 7.
Yes, exactly.
So,
and if they can use that term enough to conflate, and I don't even like to stand up, I'm not even standing up for him, but they called Ben Shapiro a Nazi in the New York Times. Now, granted, he got them to retract that term after he threw a temper tantrum. And I wonder why it is Ben Shapiro got them to retract that term, but they would never retract that term for someone like you or Nick Fuentes or something. If that were, you know what I mean? Like, of course, Ben Shapiro can get them to retract that, but they'll associate that term with anyone they don't like. And that's not something that people don't know, but I think people really need to internalize, like, why is that? Why are we still talking about, like I said in the tweet, why are we still talking about a political party from the mid 20th century in Germany? There's nothing unique about that. It's a joke. It's a joke.
You know, and the thing about it as well with the Nazis is, what were some of the central pillars of Nazism? Just objectively, you know, it was a staunch nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
It was an ethnic identity of white people. It was a closed borders, non-intervention. I mean, of course, the Nazis were sort of advancing an empire, but they weren't, you know, beforehand, they weren't starting foreign wars. They didn't have policy, those kind of things.
Plenty of empires advanced their interests across the world, you know, like.
And the ultimate goal was to, well, I mean, I suppose it was to go, but let's talk about, you know, nationalism and ethnic identity. And those are two of the biggest things that is supposed to be universally rejected, condemned amongst conservatives. You know, it's not even that, like, it's not a hardcore ethnic identity, but you shouldn't even think of yourself, you as a black person, me as a white person. There should be no in-group preference. There should be no, you know, group consciousness. What it should be is you believe in free markets. You believe in, you know, like letting corporations kind of do whatever they want. If something doesn't harm you as an individual, it's not bad, and you should allow it to persist based on principle. And that should ultimately, and you should support the military. And that's what should define you as a conservative. And that's the biggest problem. So when we branch, just like when Ben Shapiro called Donald Trump alt-right, which is, we hate the alt-right. The
alt-right's cringe. Like, and they're losers. They're schizophrenic losers. We're America first. Like
America first. And we don't even care about, it's not a white movie. You're black, I'm white. You know, we don't care about who's in it, but we want people that want to represent the founding principles of America.
Exactly.
And, you know, don't want to have this destructive pursuit of progress. Whether that be, that's the thing. Progress is not a term that's confined to the left. Progress on the right, they worship it the same way, through GDP growth, you know, through economic development, through democratizing countries, which just means starting foreign wars in the Middle East for Israel. And so the reason that the America First movement is supposed to be condemned by, you know, mainstream Republicans is because we've thought critically about some of these things that we're supposed to believe as conservatives, and we've said, well, hold on, you know, how does this help preserve the heritage of this country? How does this help preserve the founding ideals of the United States? You know, and because we've made these recognitions, that's a problem to mainstream Republicans in power and corporate republicanism, which is low taxes and oil.
There's something anti-liberal about our worldview insofar as that we don't acknowledge that progression is necessarily a good thing. What are we progressing towards? Like, what does that mean? If Republicans and conservatives are just as guilty of liberalism as the left is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that liberal strain has infected the Republican Party. There's nothing that the Republican Party, and I mean as a corporation, not as, you know, as Donald Trump calls himself a Republican. I mean, like the normal Republican Party. There's nothing that they're preserving.
Institutional Republican politics.
Yeah, exactly. That party is not conserving anything. And that's why I think that question to Charlie Kirk was so prescient. That guy, I don't even know the guy's name, but one of the guys asked him, it was the Rob Smith, Charlie Kirk event. He said, what are you preserving? They're not preserving anything. When you see senators like, and I hate that he's a black senator, a black Republican senator, people like Tim Scott and Nikki Haley advocating for the removal of Confederate statues. I'm like, do you want to preserve? Do you want to conserve anything? No, you just want to win the next election. You want to be palatable to the left. You want to be the face of the new Republican Party. And what I'm saying is, I like the country that we used to live in.
Yeah.
Does that mean I like everything about it? No, not necessarily. But that does mean that I'm not willing to throw away our history just to be palatable to the left.
The thing that's so stupid about people like Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, even like Marco Rubio talking about it, they think that because they're like, well, I support taking down the statues too, but it's got to be done democratically. It's like, who does that, what demographic, how many voters are you winning of? Like, who's going to be like, wow, like Tim Scott said that they should vote to take down the statues. In reality, if you fight hard for preserving heritage, and if you say, hey, you know what, we're not going to bow down to you because you've got a bunch of neurotic, over-socialized freaks ripping down statues. If you have someone who takes a hard stance for preserving cultural and historic emblems, cultural and historic American emblems, that's going to win over, that's going to bring over so many more people and get the best. You know what? I like this guy. They're not a pussy. Like, they're not going to back down to the left because these pink-haired freaks are screaming at them. That wins you more votes than winning like 0.1% of people who are like, exactly. You know what? I like that.
Well, that's why what you said earlier was really important, that before you kind of like woke up, that you thought Charlie Kirk was a net positive. He's doing good work. But here's my opinion, and I don't know if you agree with this. My opinion is that those people are actually more dangerous than people on the left, because people like Charlie Kirk, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, Marco Rubio, all they're doing is they're like dulling the claws of the right. They're making people who otherwise would maybe say, no, it's not right to take down these statues.
Yeah.
They are putting this little virus in their brain where they say, well, Marco Rubio, and I like Marco Rubio. He's a hard fighter. Dan Crenshaw, same thing I see in Texas. I have a lot of family members who are like, oh, Dan Crenshaw, he's a fighter, man. And well, he said to take down the statues, but democratically, so, they're defanging people who otherwise would be like staunchly America first. Right. That's why they are like they're controlled opposition, basically.
Right.
It's that they fit into the liberal world order where they are progressing us towards something. We're on the outside screaming, no, don't listen to these guys. Come over here. Come to America first. Come watch Nick. Be a paleocon. Be with Alex Jones and actually stand for something. And I could include Tucker Carlson and a myriad of other people there. But that's why those people are actually more dangerous than the left, because the left can keep acting stupid all they want. Not that I'm for that. I want them all arrested, frankly, like you. I want them all arrested, but they can keep acting stupid, and that will wake up a certain segment of the population. But when you have people like Shapiro doing what they do, they are convincing people, just don't fight. It's fine. Slowly but surely,
Well, and I think that is a great point. And I think another infection in the Republican Party is honestly like the fact that leaders of, mainstream Republican, the reality is, and it's nothing against them, but a lot of them are neoconservative Jewish thinkers whose primary focus are free markets. And so you have to ask yourself, and this is a valid question, how does Ben Shapiro, as a Jewish Zionist, why is his insertion of his opinion on anything related to American cultural heritage, why is that not just blatantly disregarded? Like, why is it not just, you do not have the same shared heritage and identity as us. Your opinion on this, buddy, is just not valid. You're going to have to sit this one out.
Yeah.
And so I think, and I just think that's a big problem, because what happens when Ben Shapiro starts making as Ben Shapiro then says, hey, we need to bomb Palestinians, as he mocks the, French cathedral burning down, as he mocks the
Jesus Christ crucifixion.
Jesus Christ, and doesn't even apologize. And we're supposed to, that's the first name you think of when you think about conservatives, is Ben Shapiro.
And it's like, why you have to ask yourself, like, why is that? Why is it that he's able to be at the level that he's at? It's like, why is it not Tucker? And Tucker's slowly breaking that mold to be in people's brain when they hear conservatism, slowly but surely. Right. But right now it's Shapiro.
And the thing that's interesting about Tucker is he's the most watched cable news host in TV history. And he fillets the Republican Party very often. He constantly rails on these weak Republican senators and people like, and it's not limited, let some of the worst. So Tim Scott, Marco Rubio, Ron Johnson, Mike Lee,
Nikki
Haley, governor of South Carolina. Like, he rails on people that we're supposed to think are like fighters for us, who just because they come out and they say something, you know, assertively, like, all right, you know, they're on our side. And then another thing about it is the problem that Republicans, they accept the fight from a losing position. And what I mean by that is we're allowed to be told the Republican Party is just the party of old white men. And so when we see like a black Republican or a young Republican with an eye patch who is a Navy SEAL, we're like, yeah, you know, these are the next guys. These are guys who are going to lead us. And because they're not some bumbling retard, like people like Chuck Grassley, you know, or whoever, we're supposed to be like, well, you know, okay, like these are the guys that are leading us. And so we should give a lot of deference. And I have a lot of friends who are conservative, and they're like, you know, they're like, dude, yeah, Dan Crenshaw, like he's legit.
I get that too.
Like he's the worst of them all.
Even someone like Ted Cruz, and I don't even dislike Ted Cruz as much as some of the people we've talked about, but even someone like him, he's toothless. He's toothless. Yeah. He gets on Twitter and says, we're going to have a sit down with Jack Dorsey about Twitter. Dude, you're not going to do anything. You're going to complain about China, and you're going to say, well, this is wrong. And they're going to laugh at you, and you're going to sheepishly beg that they stop censoring you, and they're going to go back to doing it. And that actually ties into America First and paleoconservative thought is censoring big tech. That's another one. It's like we've completely broke, and I think our side has broken through to people that Twitter is not just a private company. It's not just the mom and pop shop on the corner. I think that before America First and Nick really gained prominence, that was the prevailing thought. It was like, well, they're a private company, start your own Twitter. Yeah. I think that we've brought that to the forefront enough that they're too big. They need to be regulated.
Look, let's look at it this way. Let's look at the 2008 recession. When the banks failed, and we put at what at the time was a massive $800 billion or whatever we put in to bail out the banks. What was the phrase? They're too big to fail. What we've said is America as a country cannot function in its current order without these specific big banks, you know, playing their role in the financial system. So we're not getting into the merits of that, but we can apply the same principle loosely to Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube. America, there will never be, you know, no one said, well, start your own bank. Like just start your own bank. And
they would never say that.
It would never happen. The American financial system would collapse. The global economy would collapse. And so there's no such thing as starting your own Twitter, dude. Who the fuck wants to get on Gab? Like who, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, people are going to use Twitter. People are going to continue to use Twitter. And the thing that these libertarian morons don't realize is they want us to start a Gab and get on Gab. So it's all leftist. The average person, who's the average person that's going to be like, well, I want to see what the conservatives are saying, so I want to go get on Gab. And people are being censored on Gab, by the way.
I didn't actually know that.
People are being censored on Gab. And so that's the thing is it's like, dude, who cares? Why are we even defining what Twitter is? Here's the deal. Twitter is a huge platform that lots of people use to express thoughts and sentiments about a myriad of different topics. Twitter and its employees have targeted a certain sect of users to preclude, and it's not just Republican, it's really nationalist, anti-corporate, anti-international financial system. They're suppressing that thought. That's dangerous. And at the same time, a 10-year-old with an iPad can pull up a transsexual gangbang in 10 seconds.
Exactly.
That has to change.
Right.
That has to change, and you have to use the power of the state.
Well, and that's the important thing is that the Republicans don't want, the modern Republicans, conservative movement, whatever you want to call it, doesn't want to use the power of the state. They want to continue losing gracefully.
Really quickly. They say, well, they're going to use it against us one day. Bro, they're going to do it regardless.
They're already doing it, though.
They're already doing it.
We're just not fighting at all. We're not fighting. We're just, we're losing slowly. And one of the things that, one of the first things that got my Twitter account kind of started and got more interaction on it was when I was in these Zoom calls in March or April or whatever during the Gripper Wars 2 on the Zoom calls and the TikTok wars.
Yeah.
And this was one of the things that no one is ever able to answer. When I had normal Republicans approaching me with the idea that, well, it's a free market and you can start your own bank or whatever they say. I said, well, okay, answer me this. Do you know who Martin Sellner and Brittany Sellner are? Okay, they're European nationalists. They're in Austria. I think they lived in Germany for a little bit, but they are a part of the European nationalist movement. They were big name. They were a part of the Identity Europa group back in the day. Basically, what happened was Martin Sellner was kicked out of 3 different banks. He was arrested for trying to travel across country lines, and I basically used that as a criteria. It's like, are you ready for a world where your bank can just arbitrarily deny you service because they don't like your political views, or they saw a YouTube video, or Right Wing Watch wrote an article about you? Are you ready for a world where your water company cuts off your water because they didn't like your stance on a certain historical event? No, they're not ready for that world. And also, the only thing that they'll say when you actually corner them on this is, all they'll say is, oh, no, I don't think it'll get to that. And it's like, why wouldn't it?
It's already happened. It's already Alex Jones, Laura Loomer, Milo. It's already happened, all of them.
Well, Laura Loomer can't get on Uber Eats. She can't take an Uber or Lyft. And it's like, as we progress, these things are going to become more dependent on technology. So you go.
And I was actually having a thought yesterday. And I thought to myself, imagine if you got to the point where big tech and big pharma were dumping so much money into the left, where they could say, look, what you would have is, you could have television channels say, look, we're not going to run ads for Republicans. You're a racist. Are you kidding me? You're a xenophobe.
You're actually already seeing that with Twitter, actually.
And I'm just saying, they can completely shut down. They can say, and what'll happen is they'll have mainstream media justify it, and they'll say, you're a racist. We're not going to be complicit in the advancing of racism. Like, are you kidding me?
How far are we from that?
I mean, in many ways we're already there, but it can get to a point where one thing I've thought, and I'm sad that I'm doing my classes remotely this semester, and that it's not a typical, in-person class session, multi-week or, multiple times a week, because I would actually like to gauge, and I have some leftist friends. I don't have any cuck leftist friends, like, who are just gay, like, but I know a couple of them, and they're independently intelligent people, but they call themselves socialists. They're voting for Joe Biden. It's one of those type deals.
Yeah. I'm a socialist. Let me vote for the corporatist.
Right. For the corporate puppet. And what I've always should racism be criminalized? Like, racism, should it be?
That is such an important question.
What's stopping them? If the racist is the worst thing you can be, which we've already established at a sociocultural level, it is. What's stopping you from implementing the death penalty for racism?
Right.
We have to stamp this out by any means necessary.
I totally agree. I think how they would answer that question is, they would say, if you can not death penalty, but I think they could say that you would criminalize it if you could prove that it played a factor in a decision-making process against a person of a lower socioeconomic status than you. But even that, I mean, we both know that would just be abused. That whole criteria would just be abused.
I think it could go further. I mean, you have in Britain and Germany, you can't say certain things. They're arresting 90-year-old grandmas for having anti-Muslim views, as in France, as a teacher's head got
cut off. Right, I saw that.
Decapitated for showing a cartoon of Muhammad. So in a celebration of free speech, hey, guess what, buddy? They don't have those values over there in the desert, And when you let them into your country, they're gonna fucking kill you.
Exactly.
And so, but no, I don't understand why it would stop at what you're saying. I don't think it's because they would say we have to stamp this out before it can impact a person of color or an oppressed or marginalized person.
Well,
just the mere thought. I just want to finish quickly. Just the mere thought of you publicly expressing racism or xenophobia or bigotry in any shape, way, or form, that would have to be met with stringent and severe punishment from the state. You would have to say.
What do you think they would say if you asked them, should it be illegal for a white person to ever say the N word in any context? What do you think they would say? A leftist?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Without a doubt, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's leftists, but we don't support free speech, not unabated free speech.
Right. I really don't. If I was to really take my ideology to the extreme, I don't either.
I have no problem.
Really, all it comes down to is who's in power, actually, when you think about it. It's really a power game. That's the thing. That is an entirely different. Yeah, that requires some thought for me.
People don't understand at an institutional level what really the left could do. So let's think about it this way. How did Barack Obama change the way sexual assault court cases were handled in college courts? You were presumed guilty until proven innocent. Effectively, you were assumed
by a tribunal or something.
By a tribunal, institutional academia employees. So what if you applied the same principle to courts on racism? And you'd say, look, a person of color has accused you of racism. They have no reason to fabricate this, since it is the most traumatizing and destructive thing that can happen to somebody. Therefore, we have to initially take them at their word, and the burden is then incumbent upon you to prove why you were not either A, complicit, or B, an advancer of racism or implicit marginalization.
Well, I think that's what they're trying to get at with the anti-racism training. It's not enough to not be racist. You have to be anti-racist, which means violence. And silence is violence.
To an idiot, they're like, yeah, you do have to be anti-racist because racism is so bad.
Well, and that gets into the midwit video we did last week, where if you're a midwit, that's totally fine. You're like, no, it makes sense. You have to be an anti-racist because racism is the worst thing you can be. You can't just not be a Nazi. You have to be like anti-Nazi. And it's like, well, you're compelling me to say things that I don't necessarily want to say. Maybe there's nuance to it. Maybe, I don't know. You know what I mean?
So here's what's interesting. A good buddy of mine who lives in Florida, and he was home for the summer, and we were spending a lot of time together chilling. And one night we were having a conversation with his mom, who's a super sweet lady. And we got to talking about, the race riots and COVID and a lot of course, the hot button issues that are dominating contemporary discourse. And so I said, well, ma'am, because she was sort of giving a bit of a monologue about kind of what her principal beliefs and convictions were. And she said, I believe in white privilege. Like I believe, we have it easier than a black person. And I said, well, so you believe in sort of whiteness as an inherently oppressive metastructure then, that really and that's what it is, that the existence of white people is
you were outgunning her. I can already tell.
Well, but I just want to work through the sequence that this argument went through. And so I said, so you do acknowledge then that really whiteness as a structural thing is what is the cause of the oppression of black people and mistreatment for black people, and that by the sheer act of being white, we really are indirectly participating in structural oppression of black people, because of course white privilege is what black marginalization exists in relation to.
Right.
And so I said, you would have to acknowledge that we are complicit in that. And she said, no. Well, I don't believe that. And I said, she said, I don't believe that. I just believe that as white people, we have it easier. And I said, well, and this woman was a Democrat. And I said, well, I said, you're wrong. I said, and I sort of took on that leftist, a leftist viewpoint. I said, you're wrong. I said, white privilege is a result of structural whiteness, which directly and indirectly acts as an oppressive force on people of color, on black, indigenous people of color by POC. And she said, well, no, she was, and this woman, smart lady, but, political vocabulary was not, wasn't very extensive. And she said, well, no. I just think that white people just have it easier. She said, I'm not oppressing anybody by existing. I said, ma'am, that's literally what white privilege is.
Well, according to a leftist, she's just wrong. Her existence is oppressive.
this is an exemplification of your white fragility, because you've acknowledged part of no, but seriously,
no, you're right. If you're a leftist, you are dead on. You are dead on if you're a leftist.
The thing with these infallible left-wing academic propositions is that this is an example of white fragility. You're willing to acknowledge your privilege, but what you're not willing to do is admit your complicity in the structural oppression and the role that your whiteness plays into BIPOC communities.
Right.
And so what this is nothing more than a representation of white fragility and your inability to go the extra mile when it comes to combating racism and structural oppression. And I said this verbatim. And she just didn't really understand.
Yeah.
And I said, and then I just ended with this. I said, do you understand how they use this language to control you?
That is awesome. That is actually pretty awesome. You totally embodied the leftist and made her defend. Yeah, I get. Okay.
And I'm well versed in that.
Exactly. I could pretend to be a left. Yeah, exactly. That's easy. Pretty good.
You just have to know the terms.
Exactly. So no, that's awesome.
But so let me just say really quickly is that's why, to tie it back to conservatism, that's why to be a real conservative, you really have to be ideally a Christian, but a Christian nationalist, America First patriot, which is in part embodied by conservative principles, because you cannot be a liberal Republican. Again, when we say liberal, we're talking about your political beliefs exist under the framework of Western liberalism. Exactly. You can't be that, because what's a core institution of Western liberalism? Well, it's institutional academia. And so you can't say, well, I disagree with that, and we're going to have a reasoned, principled, intellectual discussion. No, you're a racist. You're going to jail.
Exactly. I don't know what these people think is going to happen. It's like that Scott Adams, not really even Cernovich. He's nobody, but like Scott Adams is like, we're going to have an intellectual discussion with the people that want my head on a stake, basically. Right. And it's like, no, they're going to come in and they're going to kill you, and they're going to do horrible things to you and your family. And they're going
to celebrate it.
And it'll be awesome. And they'll film it and they'll put it on World Star, and it's going to be funny to them. And if you defend yourself, you're going to be charged with a hate crime, actually. Right. I don't think they understand the world that we're entering. I think either they're idealistic, or they're just grifters trying to keep the money train going. I don't know what Scott Adams is. I can't impugn his motives. But
I hate Scott Adams.
I used to like him, and he's another one of those people that, and actually this ties in nicely, he's another one of those people that got me to where I'm at now. I listened to his debate with Sam Harris back in 2017, where he broke down the idea that the left and the right, this was when there was still a legitimate debate going on the left and right about, is Trump evil or not? And of course, Sam Harris was on the Trump is evil side, and Scott Adams was on the he's not side. And Scott Adams was breaking down the idea that the left and the right are watching two different movies, or watching the same movie from two different sides of the theater. So they're watching it backwards, and the enemy appears as that whole thing. And it's like, good luck convincing BLM and giving an hour-long spiel about different movie. They're going to kill you because you're white.
They're just going to kill you.
Like, you're just done.
They're just going to kill you. It's, what's been
you're the Trump supporting Dilbert creator. You're dead.
Right. Right. That's all you are. That's all you are. And you're going to have to die. You're going to have to pay serious restitution. You will have to bend the knee. What's interesting is that, so, on Twitter, like I have, because, I had a regular account when I was and I am just a regular guy, but before I started being more vocal about politics, I had, and so like regular kids from high school and college and, my city's community, followed me or whatever. And what's been interesting is, as my account has started to gain traction here over the last, couple months, and I picked up more followers, and so kind of normies have seen me getting more engaged in my tweets. I've actually had like regular white people, both boys and girls, DMing me being like, hey, like I've never, particularly in regards to the things I say about BLM. Mm-hmm. And what I said was, you remember so I tweeted early on in the BLM riots and George Floyd riots, and I said, the black square and putting a fist in your bio and putting BLM in your bio will not stop them from coming to your house and killing you. And then you remember, like it was, and then you remember 2 days later, what happened was the guy who was there protesting with the BLM people, remember he got beaten within an inch of the guy with like the green plaid shirt on who was getting just kicked in the head and he got paralyzed at the BLM. You remember he had like a sword, but he like wasn't like trying to,
So
he was just,
hold on.
he was just some little nerd.
You know where that was, right? That
Where?
was in Dallas. That was
Oh,
at the
yeah.
that was at the rally
Yeah.
I was at, where I was pretending to be a leftist so I could get good film, so I could get good footage and get to the front of the line without getting destroyed. Right. But yeah, I remember that. I don't remember that guy, to be fair, but I remember seeing that video and everyone being like, he wasn't anti-BLM. He wasn't a Trump supporter.
He was with them. He was there
with them. He just had a sword and he was trying to protect his life. And I remember that guy.
And it wasn't like he like was like some Viking who like he was just some little nerd. He probably
was a total nerd. And they stomped him.
And he was just probably doing some massive LARP and he just got his shit kicked in by these militant black. And they fucking dude, he got kicked and he made that little twitch like,
you knew
and it was getting celebrated on Twitter like by the militant blacks. And so he was like, and I said, and I quoted that video. I quoted that video with the screenshot of my tweet where I said, it doesn't matter if you've got the fist up and you post the where they're coming for you.
Well,
and
it was
quoted that. Well, and I just quoted that with a screenshot of my tweet, that video. And so what's been interesting is over the last couple months, I've had like normie white people who are really nice people. So, you know, they don't consider themselves really conservative, but they recognize kind of that the left is insane. They're messaging me and being like, wow, dude, like this is crazy, you know, because that's sort of, I try to be immediate. You know, we have fun on America First Twitter and we like to meme and it's called trolling. We do a little trolling. But, you know, also trying to articulate some things that kind of normies are like, because that was kind of really what my Twitter account was before I picked up a bigger first following. And so I said, you know, and so it's like people, I can appreciate what I'm, you know, I like what I'm trying to do in that I'm trying to get regular people. White people they mean so well, and a lot of them are such good people deep down.
There is a lot of pathological altruism there, where it's like you want the peace.
Pathological altruism. And by the way, let's get real about it. At a communal level, that's endemic only to white people.
I agree. I hate to say it, but I agree.
It's just true.
It is.
No other racial group in the world, no matter where the dominant structure is, white people are the only racial group that literally actively think, how can I do good by this other group?
Yes.
You know, and we sit there and our compassion is spit on. And that's why for me early on, I would have never been a BLM guy, but that's why early on in these riots, because initially I was like, man, what happened to George Floyd was bad, you know, but I would never go square. Dude, after like a week, I was like, fuck these people, kill them all, kill these blacks. Like, are you fucking kidding me? These people are violent. They want to kill white people. So I don't want to go too much. I've been taught. I want you to talk, but I just wanted to explain kind of how
that ties into everything we're talking about. I think
you have to have a set foundation of beliefs that does not bend to the whims of the left. And that's what's entailed by being an America First Christian nationalist.
Exactly. And I think that's a perfect way. Oh no, dude, you're fine. I'm interviewing you. I want you to go off. This is awesome. Yeah, dude, for me personally, I think a lot of people are taken aback when I have the views that I have, because they're like, well, you're black, Jordan. Well, it's like, yeah, I mean, yes, but I'm half black, half white. So half of my family is white, and I have a lot of small cousins, and we're Catholic. And what I'm looking at is, do I want the world that they grow up in to be openly hostile to them? No, I don't. I want them to be able to go to a mall and go get clothes and shoes without getting beat up, you know? And I don't want Christianity attacked. I don't want Catholicism attacked, but that's what we're seeing is an open fight against white Christians. Really, I don't really see it. I don't really see black Christians being attacked in the streets. I don't see black Christians being told that they have black Christian privilege. I don't see any of that. I see white people being attacked, and I'm just going off of what I see now. If someone can show me any current example in 2020 of black Christians outside of Africa where Muslims are attacking black Christians, I don't see that here in the States. I'm looking at what the problem is and I'm diagnosing it. Right. I think you hit something, or what did you say about that's why we're America first? is because we're not going to cut to the left. We actually have an affirmative worldview. We want certain things. It's not just I want to lose at a slow rate.
One that's unmalleable, unconforming, and that doesn't ever even consider an acquiescence to the whims of the left.
Exactly. It's unapologetic. I think that's
yes, exactly.
I think that's what people want right now, is something unapologetic. And
that's why Tucker. That's why they support.
That's what I was going to say. That's why I like Tucker and I like Trump, because there's never an apology there.
And that's what people want. That's what people want.
Right.
And, to tie it back to what we sort of talked about last week was, you can say, I see white Christians under attack, and you're just like, people like, all right, like people like Tamika Mallory or Black Lives Matter be like, them white folk ain't never gonna treat you like them. They'll say something like that. Whereas if I said, white Christians are the real ones under attack, I could face serious professional consequences.
And that's enough right there to tell you who's under attack. You and I can say the exact same thing. You and I could put out the exact same tweet, and you would be more at risk of getting fired than I would.
I would be.
If I had
a job, you would lose your job if you said the real people. We already saw it. Like, all these companies fired people for saying, hey, like, what about white people being beat down? I don't get off on that. I don't enjoy that. It's just me analyzing the current situation. You've gotten into it with normie friends of mine. I remember a few months ago where this guy I knew from middle school was like, Jordan, they're never going to treat you the way that you think they would. And I'm like, dude, I'm not here to get treated a certain way. And I said, yeah, Jordan, stop being a coon. And he said, bro, you really gonna let the white boy talk to you like that?
And it's like, dude, you don't understand internet culture. And two, that's actually the point, is that the fact that I'm even having to critique this shows where we're at right now.
That guy was a fucking midwit, bro.
Well, and that's funny you say that, because he's actually not dumb. He's actually a midwit. He's a midwit, which in a lot of cases is worse than being dumb.
Right.
Frankly.
And that's what I said. That's what I said.
Actually worse.
That's what I said.
But yeah, I mean, it really just takes a diagnosis of the current situation. And it's like, we can all see if you're being honest, you can see who's under attack. If you're blinded by rage, then you won't understand it.
Well, so let's look at it from this perspective. So when you said, I want my younger white cousins to be able to, just do their thing without being, assailed, whether verbally or physically. And people are saying, this is the leftist response. I'm good at this. So this is the leftist response. So you don't want your white family members to be accountable to and have to confront their complicity in racism. Meanwhile, you're comfortable with Black people being mowed down in the streets by institutional white adjacent police officers. That's peak whiteness. And Jordan, you're white adjacent. Like, you're not, you ain't one of us. Whatever that stupid Black lady said,
if being one of you means acting in an uncivilized way, then I don't want a part of groups that act that way. I know plenty of Black people that don't behave that way. Now, are you going to catch me out, rioting with BLM? No. Are you going to catch me looting? Someone had a really interesting tweet. They tagged me and another Black groyper. They said, Jordan B. and this person will make it to the age of 47 because they don't commit crimes and they don't do drugs. It's actually very simple. And one of the lines that I used in another video was that took a lot of heat from the left was, it's actually not difficult to not get killed by the police. And I've noticed that actually, it's really not difficult. You don't reach, it's all common sense stuff. And to act like there's a war out there where a policeman might knock on my door and just gun me down, you are living in a world that was created for you by the left and other people that control the left.
Total fantasy land.
It's a fantasy land. It's ethno-narcissism. It's actually not even ethno-narcissism.
But it is such extreme narcissism.
No, it's actually not even ethno-narcissism. I just thought about this. It's ethno-masochism. You like the pain that's being inflicted upon you like the perceived pain that's being inflicted on your community because it gives you a little bit of grounding. It gives you a little bit of status above other people. It's interesting.
Well, so one thing everyone should follow on Twitter Mystery Grove Publishing Company. He's in one of our chats.
Oh yeah, I love that guy. That
He's
guy's awesome.
And we've actually we actually had a conversation, a personal conversation on the phone, and really smart guy. And a great point he made that really ties into all this is that, like, dude, 80% of people in this country are like functionally insane. Like they should be clinically committed, you know, at like psychiatric wards. And that's the problem. Is like, this is where we're at in America, where you like people all have this desire. It's like this weird, like, hero complex to some, and then like, you know, this victim complex to others. And then they're like, and people are like applying these like Hollywood principles to their daily life. And it's like, dude, it's not that deep. Like, just go, don't, you know, call people the N-word, and don't, you know, don't go to the store on fentanyl and meth, or don't be a convicted child rapist who resists cops and wrestles with them. And you're probably going to be fine. You know, don't fire a gun at police officers and you won't get shot. Like people think that literally like these white cops were like, hey, I bet there's some, you know, hard R's in there. I'm not going to worry about it. I bet there's a couple of them in there. Just pull up like outside, just go. And they're like, we got one, boys. Like,
that's what they want. That's what they wanted you to believe about the Breonna Taylor situation.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking. That's the example I'm talking about is Breonna Taylor. And then they come out and say, a black woman was murdered and the cops were only charged for the bullets that missed. Like,
I love that one. That one was totally up the midwits alley. And because I saw that one too on Instagram. These cops didn't get charged, but they did get charged for the walls they shot. And it's like, oh my God. Honestly, hold on. It did take a 150 IQ leftist to write that, but it took the trough. No, I think someone wrote that.
No, that's something that a retard can write. That's something that like a 90 IQ black e-girl can write.
I think that was something that was dropped down where it was in a think tank and they were like, what will they believe? What will they buy into? And they dropped it. And they dropped it down and the masses were like, and that, because I saw it so much on Instagram to where I was like, oh man, they like injected an IV of talking points into their veins. But I mean, dude, we got onto like a whole side tangent, but it's fine. It was a good talk. I think it was good. This has been
really good. I think we've done a really good job here.
I think we broke a lot down here. Hold on do you have anyone because I'm not going to edit this and stuff. I like people to have the authentic experience. You have 10 seconds for me to pour a drink really quick?
Yeah.
In 20 seconds? Because what I want to get into next is the impact. I think there is actually some to unpack here. The impact that America first has had on the modern discourse. Yeah. And how like the conversation has shifted since paleoconservatism has kind of risen, not prominence, we're not there yet, but the ideas are kind of bubbling up to the surface now. You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Give me 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. My bad, dude.
You're good.
You still hear me?
Yeah.
Nice.
Your camera's maybe a little bit foggy.
It should come back. I think it's going to come back in focus now that I'm sitting here. Double check.
So so I'd like to talk about this. I think we really killed it with what we did here, and maybe we wrap up with this. And because we're getting on these calls, like, and we're blowing through an hour, like we just ran through 60.
It doesn't even feel like, what are we even at? I don't even know what we're at. It's over an hour, I think.
Yeah, we started around 4.
Oh, okay. It's 4. So we started at like 3 my time.
We should talk about we got an hour difference. We should talk about this, and then I feel like we can probably put together a topic every, however many times, you want to have me on. But
I don't see why. Yeah. I mean, I don't see why these talks couldn't go on for an hour or more a week, once a week or twice a week, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude. So, okay, I'll start with this. What I've noticed as far as, I think you probably put a good marker point as far as when it all started. I think it was probably Groyper Wars, maybe a little bit before that, but Groyper Wars #1 at the TPUSA events was kind of the starting point. But ever since then, I've noticed a huge uptick in younger people, because on TikTok, I've noticed a lot of younger people using the hashtag paleoconservative, America First. I've noticed that younger people are starting to find America First as like an alternative to normie BS that they know is BS.
Yeah.
It's really attracting like the highest IQ of the highest IQ. Yeah. Jaden McNeil is actually probably like the best example of this. Like Jaden, he was a Turning Point USA ambassador or president at K-State. After Groyper Wars, he stepped down from his position, and now he's one of the leaders of America First. He's awesome. And I think that this movement is kind of giving people a little bit of an outlet to be like, wait, actually, you know what? Maybe the free market isn't, good in and of itself. Maybe capitalism isn't good in and of itself. Not that it's bad, but
having more assertive political ideology.
Exactly. And that ties into social conservatism. But yeah, what do you think about that? I mean, what do you think about the impact that maybe Nick, America First, paleoconservatism, do you think that is starting to come to the surface in the Republican Party? Do you think, what do you think's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, no, I do. And like you said, I mean, I think particularly amongst young people is recognizing the shortcomings and deficiencies of traditional conservative thought in the free marketeer sense. And so I think that's a critical thing. I think that's played a critical role amongst young people and people like my age and even a little bit younger is sort of that yearning, like I just said, for a more assertive political ideology that actually isn't scared to take steps and doesn't bow down and whimper whenever the left accuses you of being a racist, and just saying, A, fuck you, B, I'm racist.
And then B, what does that even mean? Like,
what does that even mean?
You like that tweet I had
and D, frankly, not who cares and okay, I'm a racist, but all right, so if you're racist, does that mean you're a universally terrible person and nothing you say should be taken to? Because that's what Ben Shapiro says. As Ben Shapiro said with Dave Rubin, is we should find racists, target them,
fire them, and execute them, and like get them out of polite society. And it's like
keep a little hat on and just
it's like
die for Israel and just don't say anything.
Well, you like that tweet I had where it was like there was that guy who was trying to neg on someone on our side, and he was like, nationalism equals racism. And it's like racism as a word has only been around for the last 100 years, actually. When you go back to writings in the mid 18th century and early 20th century, it's only been around for about 100 years. All racism means is white in-group preference. That's actually all it means. Yeah. That's why a Black person can never like effectively be called a racist. You can levy that label, but it never sticks.
Well, I would say, so racism was initially a scientific theory, which was created was created in the late 19th century, proliferated through the early 20th century through institutional academia. Initially, it was cool to be a racist. Like amongst progressive Democrats, you would say like, I'm a racist. Like, and that was cool.
Because I'm studying race or something. Like,
right. Because you were studying, eugenics and those sorts of things. And
that ties into the Margaret Sanger thing a little bit,
Right. Yeah. Well, and it does, because over 200 universities had racism clubs where like you would sit and talk about racial differences and you would try to create solutions from it. And, W.E.B. Du Bois wanted the bottom 90% of the black gene pool bred out of existence. And so racism was a good thing. It was cool. You were deemed intelligent if you subscribed to racial theory up until World War II. And of course, the Nazis adopted much of Western racial eugenics into a political movement in the National Socialist Party. Mm-hmm. And then after that, in the 50s and 60s, being a racist was
the worst thing you could ever be, especially
I think it's been more recently.
Right.
The last 10 years where being a racist and, carry the consequences it does.
True.
Just the determination that you are a racist, or either you're complicit in racism, that you engage in racism in one way or the other, where it became such a mortal sin.
You just black-pilled me pretty hard there talking about W.B. Du Bois. And then I start thinking about Garvey, and I start thinking about Malcolm X, and I start thinking that the black community used to have serious thinkers. You know what I mean? Like we as a community used to have like high IQ. Maybe not all of them were high IQ, but they were onto something.
Very insightful. Malcolm X was a very smart person.
Like, exactly.
He was a good thing for the black community, and
we traded it off for people like Hannah Nicole Jones and Ta-Nehisi Coates. And it's like, these people are not smart. Like, they are literally midwits, Yeah,
and they are midwits. But, the impact of America First. I mean, I think just changing the way people think. And what I said to you on the phone was that, say it bluntly, Nick Fuentes, as an online streamer from his parents' basement, he gets ragged on for it. Nick Fuentes has impacted more people's thinking than Jake Tapper, Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, Sean Hannity, and all these people combined in their combined century of experience in political media. And when you really actually extrapolate when you try to extrapolate holistically the consequences of Nick Fuentes' America First movement, you're talking about an impact of north of 1 million people, if not more.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about a multi-continental movement. No one cared. No one sits down in France and says, like, what is Jake Tapper saying? Like, oh, wow.
Right.
Fuentes is really impacting the way people are thinking, you and I included, and so many hundreds of thousands more.
He was a huge part of my development, not mentally, but ideologically. I mean,
same.
So, I mean, and even when you look at it, it's not even just him. It's a lot of the works that he's brought forward. He's brought back Sam Francis being brought back into the public lexicon. Peter Brimelow, he's brought that back. He's brought back Pat Buchanan comparisons. Even when you go back as far as the 30s, as Charles Lindbergh having his slogan being America First, he's bringing back a lot of the things that have been dead and gone that they want buried from the past. So I think when you look at it from that angle, I think that's another aspect to look at it through, is he's brought back historical works, historical figures.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll be honest. My back is really hurting from leaning forward.
From never mind. I was going to make a joke. But I will, we can end it there. That's fine, man. We can, we'll set up a new video soon. I think this was good. I think we covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, this has been really good. I think this is maybe a good point to wrap up and continue on with another call.
Absolutely. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. We will do this again soon. Follow me. Well, I'll put all my info in the bio below. Be sure to look at the bio below. Had a good time talking to you, Carter, and I'll talk to you soon, man.
Likewise. Good stuff, guys.
Later, bro.
Yep.